All right, good evening. Welcome to tonight's webinar with Classpad.net. We will be taking a look at some of the 2016 AP Stats questions just to help you, those of you who are teaching AP Statistics, to help your students prep for their exam, which is next Friday on the 22nd. We are going to keep everyone muted and keep videos off just for the sake of webinar quality. And before we dive into the actual webinar, I wanted to introduce myself and the others that are on this webinar. So my name is Amy Chow, and I am going to help moderate tonight and answer any questions. And we also have Dr. Karen Greenhouse, or Karen as she likes to be called. And then our presenter is Ish Zamora. So just to give you a little bit of background, I am the training and product manager for Casio Education. I've been an educator for the last 14 years, and my current job is to just help out with these webinars and set up the schedule, and also help prep any trainings, and also work with our consultants to write curriculum and different things. Karen?
Hello, and I'm Karen Greenhouse. Been a teacher forever, I think, and I work with Casio as a consultant, so it feels pretty full-time, and I do a lot with Classpad.net and making the how-to tutorial videos on our YouTube channel, and obviously supporting our webinars now. So, and Ish, to you.
Oh, I felt like Vanna White for a minute there, because Amy was on the second slide, and I felt like I'd missed the letter A there. Like, oh, I forgot to flip the letter. It's like, why isn't she flipping the slide? Anyway, I'm Ismail Zamora. I go by Ish, department chair at York High School in Elmhurst. I've been doing this, if Dr. Greenhouse has been doing this forever, I've been doing it for a day less than forever. Been a department chair for a really long time. I've taught everything from 7th and 8th grade math all the way through AP calculus. AP statistics, when I got the opportunity to teach that, was life-changing, and I taught that for 13 or 14 years, about 18 or 20 sections, and I can't wait to get my hands on it. It's one of the few courses where what you talk about on day one, you talk about on day, 181 or 180 if it was a podcast. There you go. Little plug there for Karen Greenhouse's podcast. Anyway, we live in a great time where statistics is all over. I mean, the fact that we're running through a pandemic right now, epidemiology is a huge place where statistics gets used. We hear about models on TV every single day, and it's not supermodels. They are pretty awesome, but they are statistical models. We're looking at data and trying to figure out what data is trying to tell us. So logistical curves, exponential growth, making sense of information, things like that, is where stats really comes to life. I mean, some of the biggest careers out there, big data and analysis of information and being able to digest it, is where more students need experience than just about anything else. Every career is going to use data in some way, and not to knock calculus, because I also love calculus, but statistics and data and information gathering and data mining and being able to tell the truth through information is, I think, where we need to really focus some of our energy. Anyway, we've got AP exams going crazy right now, and our students are turning them in. And if you haven't seen, this is the kind of work kids have been turning in to me, except the one in blue. That one was posted on a Facebook page. This is the type of work we're getting from students when they take a picture and send it to you. I did not include anything that had really seriously poor penmanship, but this is quality of the problems. I mean, this is what we're dealing with when we have kids working at home, and they've got to send us the information. So this is what it looks like. So imagine you are an AP reader, and this is the thing you get turned in from a student. If you have been grading online, which most of us, if you're still in the teaching profession, are getting kids turning in their work like this and reading this on a screen. The laptop I get issued from the school is a 13-inch screen. They include these pictures as little snippets in a Google slide, and then I have to try to strain my eyes to see it. And depending on the time of day, this screen looks really, really bad. This blue one, I can't even
I
imagine
was
how
gonna say, I
somebody
don't
could
know
have
how
read
you
that
do
one.
that.
That one is
Wow.
just really, really bad filtering. I don't know what's going on there. And what we're finding out from AP is students are running out of time because they're trying to submit their pictures and they're either not doing it in time or they think they can upload their picture to their computer. And remember, it's a 5-minute time limit. So the minute you click go, that 5 minutes is starting to go. So now you've got to take a picture, make sure that your name is on there, make sure your information about your ID number, all of that stuff is on there. And then it turns out that iPhones use this native format that is HEIC, and that is not allowed. So kids have to convert that to a JPEG file or a PDF file and then upload all of that information. And you can't turn it in early because it will block you for if you attempt it to do it early. So you've got 5 minutes. And just in the time I've started this slide, I've lost almost a minute. So I can't even imagine what kids are going through. So what do you do? AP has been saying what they really would like people to do, students to do, is open up their information on a device other than the camera they're going to use. So they need something that you can pull up the question on and be the same one where you're going to submit your answer. So your answer should be submitted on the same device as the one that you're currently using to read the questions. So with that being said, what do we have? You could do Google Docs, but there is issues with Google Docs and certain softwares, and they've got a whole list that you can scroll through on problems and issues and restrictions. So what I've been using with my Algebra 2 Honors class this year is Classpad.net. Now this is a question from 2016. This is question number 6. So this is the long response question. And I thought I would use this question for a couple of reasons. Number one, if you've never seen Classpad.net, I'll show you how I generated these questions, how the questions were put in. I typed these right in. So you've got different kinds of boxes you can create. You can create calculation boxes, graph boxes, geometry, data and statistics. You got sequences and series, financial, and finally text. So in my book and in the experience I had with my kids doing this, I was able to assign them the problems. They're able to do it as homework. So if you notice down here in the corner, it says homework, because I assign this to myself as homework, and then they can save it or submit it. Once they submit it, they get the information right to me, and I'm able to grade it, give them feedback, let them know how they did. So I figured this is a great time to use the actual question from 2016 to start looking at some of the features. And how could I use this if this was my question for the AP exam this year? How could I use this to submit my answer to AP in one place? Mind you, the one thing I won't be able to do if I'm doing the actual AP exam is pull in the question like I did here. So I pulled the question apart and created the data sets. But I thought, you know what, this is a great opportunity for me to show everything that I can use Classpad.net to do. One of the first things they want you to do is they want you to name the paper according to your AP ID. So whatever your AP ID number is, and then your initials. So that would be my name, whatever my Apple ID name is, or my AP ID, I should say, and my initials. And then now it's able to be turned in as long as it's a PDF. And I'll show you the pages that I make here are all going to be formatted as PDF, and they come out less than a megabyte. So depending on how much information you got on there, but the PDFs that get generated are relatively small. So this question is talking about a German newspaper, and it's looking at semesters of work and the number of euros, the amount of euros, how much money these people get paid for every semester beyond their regular academic program. So we've got a nice big scatter plot here. You're looking at the scatter plot and you're looking, okay, I see a definite upward trend. So if I'm answering this question, it wants to know, for question number 1, part 1, wants to know, does the Scatterplot support the newspaper's report about the number of semesters and starting salary? Justify your answer. Now the newspaper is saying, per thousands, for every hour that you increase, it appears to be a positive relationship. So I'm ready to answer the question. So I could either answer the question up there, I could answer it down below, or I'm just going to put it in between. So what I want to do is create a text box. I could say this is question number 6, part A. And 6 part A, what I'm going to say is, according to the data, so according to the scatter plot, there appears to be a positive linear, linear relationship. And you also notice that I am purposely misspelling words just to show you that it does have auto, or lets you know when I misspell a word. My font just changed there because I hit something by a mistake. Anyway, there's a positive linear relationship. It is moderately strong. So it's not a very strong relationship. So the relationship is not the greatest, but it answers the question. You could add more, and you probably should add more, between semesters or semester hours and pay in euros. You could say pay in thousands of euros. Something else you may have noticed is I can change the font size. I can also make things bold. I can, whatever you can do with most word processors within a limit of its creativity, you can do on here. The other thing I can do is I can also add equations. So as soon as I opened up the equation editor, it gives me the opportunity now to create equations. So if I need a z-score, for example, and I want to say z equals, I can start typing in the actual information. So I can say x minus mean, and I can put that in parentheses. And then when I press divide, it will turn it into what we're used to seeing, which is a fraction over the standard deviation. So now that gets added to my note. So the information gets saved, and it looks the way you would expect it to look when you're dealing with statistics or when you're dealing with math. So I can create sticky notes that look like what I want it to do. Now, the other thing I can do, and I've asked my students when I do this, is answer the first question and give it to me on a yellow sticky so I know what to look for. So I pose all the questions in one color, all the answers get posed in another color. So now students are actually looking at this information. So the other thing is, what if I just wanted to give them this information? Now the actual AP exam gives them the coefficients and all the information from a data table, including p-values and t-values and r's and r squareds, all the good stuff that you need from statistics. But if you're not ready to do that, like I'm not ready to do that as a teacher, I'm teaching regression. What I want to do is I want the students to create a regression. So all I did here was in my data table, which I created a data table, put this information, I called it semester and salary. And this is salary in thousands of euros, and that can be added as a note. I highlighted those two, and these are the options I have. I can run statistical tests, regressions, intervals, distributions, inverse distributions, calculations, or more importantly, let's look at a graph. I've already made a scatter plot, so I know what that looks like. So the other thing I can do is I can calculate a regression. So I'm going to do a regression. I'm going to say I'm going to do a linear regression. As soon as I do that, I get the red line here now that is telling me some information from a linear regression. It's in the form of ax plus b, and I've got the option to change it to a plus bx. So it depends. Stats people like the a plus bx. If you're teaching algebra 2, ax plus b. Why the difference? I'm not really sure. In all the years that I taught stats, I know there was a difference, but I think science uses the a plus bx, and so do statisticians. Mathematicians tend to use the ax plus b. It rearranges the variables according to what you're doing. So a, that's my intercept, is 34. My slope is about 1.1. My R value, again, 0.56. So that's something I wanted to include in my answer. I can include that sticky that has that information. And then I can move this one over on the side or below. And I could turn both of those in. The way I ask my students to do this is they would need to refer to the window in the red here that gives me all the information, including mean squared error. They don't know what mean squared error is or the coefficient of determination necessarily at the beginning. By the time they get to the AP exam, I would expect them to be talking about not only correlation coefficient, but determination and the mean squared error. So they'd be using all of this information in their answer. For the AP exam, the way I train my students is answer the question, get out, move on, go to the next question. If you think you've given enough information, you're good to go. So all this information is being added as I go through. And again, it looks like it's a straight line linear information here. It looks like it's straight. It's not all that strong. I mean, 0.56 is, this isn't the best. I wouldn't go betting the house on this regression model, but it is what it is. It appears to be linear. Again, it answers the question. So that's part one. Not too bad. It also has all this good parts that I have here. So let's go on to part two. So part two has to do now with this data table, which in the 2016 response, it was given to you as part of the question. What I'm able to do with Classpad.net and with the permission of AP, thank you AP for giving us permission and rights to use the question, is I was able to snip this part of the actual exam and bring it in to Classpad.net. So I can add pictures of whatever it is you happen to have. You could even do small, they're kind of like flipbook animation files. We found out that there are some file formats that allow you to show little animations, and as long as they don't exceed a certain size, you can include them. But all I did there was add this snippet, this picture, so that I can put it right into the question, so that when I'm working with students, they're able to take a look at this and work with it.
Ish, maybe just kind of show how easy it is to do that.
Sure.
Just on the side.
just because we've got that, we got it. So here's what I did. I click over here. I can put it in a couple of different places. I like to use the geometry window because the geometry window allows me to have a blank screen. You can also do it in the graph window. In the graph window, you've got to go into the preferences and shut some things off. So all I do is click geometry. I get a nice blank window. Down below here, I got an A, which I can use as text, or I can even use this nice little protractor. If you're measuring angles, you can drag a protractor in here and put a picture on there and measure actual real life angles. So where I clicked image, I get this gray box. And then if I've got an image sitting on my desktop or stashed away somewhere, all I have to do is drag it into that box. I don't think I have any images ready to go, but that's where I would go. I'd click here. It opens up your desktop. You find an image. You drag and drop it right in there. So it's really easy. And then once it's in, you can manipulate the size and all that good stuff. If I knew where that image was saved, I would do it again. But you get this.
Why don't you show them the image? Yeah, there you go. Just
here's the.
See what it looks like once it's in.
Yeah, so here's the image control that you get. So you get an image control. This allows you to do that. Like if I really wanted to mess with kids, you could flip it upside down just to annoy or give them something to do, because they'll always look at you funny, like, Mr. Zamora, there's something wrong with the question. And then you pretend like you have no idea what they're talking about. So you can manipulate the image lots of different ways. Or all I did was, if I'm zooming, I'm just using my mouse. So I'm zooming in or out. So I'm scrolling, using my scroll wheel back and forth, trying to find one that fits. And remember, this is all on a geometry window. So all of my geometry controls I could bring in and put triangles or something like that on there if you really wanted to get fancy. But it lets you do this with basically any image format, almost any image type. Again, there are some formats that it may not take, or image sizes if they're too big or too exacting in detail, that will give you some trouble. But it's a great way to look at real world math everywhere. That we talk about, we do math all the time, but we rarely bring in the actual math that people use. And that's one of the things that I talk to people in the trades and say, hey, if there's something that we could do better, what do you think it would be? And a lot of the tradespeople that I've talked to have said, if I had known that I could use math in this way when I was thinking about becoming a plumber or an electrician or a carpenter, that would have been awesome. My brother's a licensed plumber, and he said he did not learn math the way he really was going to use it until he actually had to use it. He said once he started seeing how slope was used in moving water away from a building, he really understood what slope was, and he now uses it every day and does it in his head like it's no big deal, but he struggled his way through algebra. So this is another great opportunity to be able to use that. So in this part, this second question just says, identify the slope of the squared regression, interpret the slope in context. Again, from the information I've got here, the slope is the coefficient that actually has a name. It's one called semester. So let's just draw a line under it. I'll do a nice dotted line, or I'll just say from here to here, there is my slope. Between A and B, there's where my slope is. You could also draw a nice little circle around it. Those are the two coefficients that you really want to look at. So those are the ones you were wanting to look at. So our coefficient for the slope is 1.15, which is not too far off of what we had calculated earlier. Ours calculated it as 1.27. Again, depending on the software program, depending on what kind of information you're using, it will look slightly different. The coefficient that's constant is your y-intercept. So now you have that information. Here's your mean squared error, and that same number adjusted. So the adjusted one looks at the possibility of outliers and things like that and adjusts it based on some other information. The S is your error. It's not your mean squared error, it's just your error. And then here's your t-values for both and the p-values for both. So in this next part of the question, I would go ahead and answer that as, this is question 2, so I don't know, let's go purple. I'd say this is question 6B. And 6B is talking about the slope is 1.1594, and this number means for every increase of 1 semester hour, we expect the salary increase to be, now remember you're talking thousands of euros, so this is 11594, oops, 0.4, and I'll even put a comma in here, euros. So again, it talks about it in context. It talks directly about what that number was, where is it found, how do you find it, what do you do with it. All right, so far we've seen a couple of things that are kind of neat, but neat won't get you very far. I mean, other than to be able, as a teacher, I love the tool to be able to assign this to every student, to be able to import pictures, to ask students to do things that we normally do on our calculators. This has the same engine running in the background as all the graphing calculators. It's based on the Casio Classpad 500 series. It has that brain inside of it, which includes computer algebra and some advanced statistical features. Again, these are all free, especially during this coronavirus outbreak. But it's something that I use with the students all the time just to get them to understand what's going on. Describe this, the association between salary and the number of semesters for students that are business majors. All right, so now I went through and created variables for each one of the three majors. So I created, for each of the majors, I created a list. One is called for business, the X values for business. Notice all I did there was type in the name that I had created. And I'll show you how I created that in a second. And then for business, I also have the Y values. When I created those, I created a list that I called business Y. And it basically created this list. So I stored this list. The other way you could do it, which I found a whole lot easier, of course, I remembered it after I did the first few by creating this list with commas and commas and commas. If I just go in and create a list that I call, I don't know, I'll call it cost, and I start typing in some values, 1, 2, 3, 4, -5, or 0.5, and then -5. And now all I'm using is my keyboard. I could use the actual keyboard on the calculator or on the Classpad here, but I'm not using that right now. So what I did there was I created a list called cost. So if I type in the word cost anywhere in any of the stickies, I will get that same information. So you can create it either in a sticky for the math creation, or you can create it right in a list. And then when I type in that word, it'll pull it right back up. So again, really nice ways of generating variables in different areas that I can now use over and over again. And I tell my students ahead of time what the variables are. So let's take a look at a scatter plot that looks at just the business model. So I'm going to create a graph and a scatter plot that looks at just at the business majors. So right now it's given to me in this nice green. I can't really see the green all that great. So I'm going to turn it to an orange. Oh, let's go red. So now I changed it, and now it's red. So now this is just looking at the business majors, and I'm zooming out to get an idea of reference about where I'm at. And you'll notice there is a clear negative relationship here. So it's clearly sloping down. So if I want to define the regression model for that, highlight the two. If you don't see what you need, use the back arrow. I'm going to find a regression that's linear. I could also do median, quadratic, cubic. So we've got lots of different regression models. I live in the state of Illinois, looking at our model for the amount of outbreaks. I've been looking at logistical models and trying to figure out what kind of models they've been using to try to figure when is this going to reach a peak and when's it going to start going downwards. It looks like we're starting to bend the curve. When people started talking about bending the curve, it was funny to see how many people misinterpreted that information. So it's a logistic model that starts to bend flat again. So when you show people that, it really brings it home and lets you realize that statistics really is everywhere. So here's a linear regression model. I want to hit more to be able to see everything. So there is my regression model. So from here, I can say, describe the association between starting salary and the number of semesters. In the business majors, it looks to me as if this is a clear negative relationship. So what I would expect the students to do is open up a stat box, open up a text box. I'll even overlap it a little bit here and have them type in. Looking at the business majors, it appears to be a strong negative linear relationship with a correlation coefficient of about negative 0.86. So the negative means it's going down. Slope being -2. So for every semester hour of work that business majors earn, as far as degrees go, they're expected to get a little bit less money, which I'm not sure what the conversion rate is for euros, but it looks pretty substantial if you're looking at thousands of euros. And how much did a semester hour cost you? So you have to think about all of those things, and great conversations to have with students. So again, that was an easy thing to do, where I created the X and the Y for business majors and created a variable, used that variable in a couple different places to be able to create a scatter plot, to come up with a regression model that models the information that I'm looking at. And then I expect my students to come in here and type in for question 6C. This is what I got for a solution, and this is why I got the solution. The other thing that's really great is I get to see that they pulled up the information, they created a scatter plot, they created a linear regression, and the important part is the interpretation of that linear regression. All of these things can be done on other technologies, calculators you can do this on. It should be relatively simple to generate these things. But what is important, and I think what we strive for in math, is can you explain what it is you did? The other thing, I don't know if you noticed, is I've got stickies that are stacked on top of each other. So if I click on the yellow sticky, and all I'm doing is clicking and holding, it gives me the option of separating the two. So now I can separate the regression equation from the actual data. So I'm looking at two different pieces. I can look at the regression model, and this is talk about what the predictions are. I can talk about what the actual numbers in the actual model are. But more importantly, when I put them back together, I click and drag, you notice a little outline. When I drop it, now I'm combining the two and creating something completely new. So I can stack all of these scatter plots together and make them all to create that original data set up here. This original data set we can create by looking at the three different majors. And maybe I'll do that in a second so you can see, you know what? Why not do it now? Let's expand my text box. I'm going to move this out of the way for now. So now I also have one for the chemistry majors. The chemistry majors I called CHMX. That's my X value. I also want the CHMY. Now when I create a new scatter plot, I'm going to go graph, scatter plot. Now I've got two of them. This one includes business and chemistry, and you notice they're in two different colors too. And then lastly, I can do the same thing with the physics majors. I'm going to go with physics, physics X, and physics Y. Highlight those two, create a scatter plot for the physics majors. So there we go. We've got the three, and now this mirrors perfectly the original one. So I could drag the original scatter plot, drag it on top, and see the relationship. Now, if you have the 2016 exam handy, you will see that one of these was a circle, one was pluses, and the other one was little asterisks, so that you could tell the difference between the three models. In this case, we take advantage of the color, so we can see the three different models have three different colors. And again, I can do a regression for the second one for the chemistry majors, and I'll do a regression there, and it creates a regression. I will do the same thing for the third one. For the physics majors, create a regression there, and there's a third one. And you'll notice that these stickies expand. So I created scatterplots, I created regression models, and the colors really come in handy because now I've got colors that associate one with the other. And in order to not confuse the teacher or the students, I could change the regression model to match the color of the picture. So the blue one was originally orange. So I will change that one to be a blue. And then do the same thing with the last one, make that one a purple one. And now when I go back, they're matching. So again, this is something I would expect my students to be able to do and to work with. And right now during this corona crisis, students are submitting some of their work through Classpad and including all of this information. So they can't exactly do trig identities on Classpad, although there are ways to do trig identities on Classpad that I have found. It's really kind of neat. That's a discussion for another day right there. Really, really cool stuff.
Another webinar.
Hey, better watch what you say.
Up
That's right. Hey, you know me, I'm willing to do these. All right, so now the last part, I think this is the last part. Now there's 2 more questions, good. Next question is, based on the people in the sample, compare the medians for the salaries. All right, so we're looking at medians. So now the median is the middle value. Now the middle value of salaries. Now here's where kids that I've done this with got confused. They were looking at medians and they always look at the X value for whatever reason. They only seem to think that all graphs or all information goes in terms of X. So they like to go, okay, the median is somewhere between the 4th and the 5th value, and they go 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, it's right here. This is the median right here, and this is 7. 7's the median. And it's like, no, you didn't look at the question. The question is, what's the median of the Y values? So you could do it graphically, realize that there's 8 values. Start with the low value and find 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So it's somewhere between 4 and 5. Well, since I've got these little tick marks, it makes it a whole lot easier for me to be able to say, you know what? It looks like this is 39, so it's like 38 and a half or so. But then again, we're trying to kind of split hairs and trying to figure out what it is. I don't like splitting hairs when it comes to math and statistics. I know stats, sometimes you get kind of, it looks like, it appears to be. There is no definite answer. Since I went through the trouble of typing in the information, I want to have a definite answer. So what I'm going to do is go into my calculate screen. So what I did there. I get all jacked up and excited when I start talking math, so it's hard to read an audience when you can't see them. So this is being recorded. So by all means, if I start yammering or talking too fast, go back, look at it, slow me down, put me on pause. But what I'm doing here is I'm clicking, causing a calculate. Now I'm going to use the handwriting tool just to show you that there is for students who have trouble either typing or need to handwrite, this software you can use on iPhones, iPads, Kindle Fires, Kindles, touchscreen laptops, Chromebooks, you name the device, it'll run on it. And it has this handwriting recognition. So what I've got here is I've got a little tablet on the side of my computer. And all I'm doing is with my pen, I'm going to create an equation. So I'm going to say 3x plus 2 equals 7. And then I'll execute it. And it should execute my, oh, you know what? Let me go to this one. I've got multiple versions of this window open right now. And one of them I may not have the right. So let me just pop this one open here. So here I go, handwriting. So let me go here. I'll say 3x. You notice the window is getting populated, plus 2 equals 7. Execute. So there it is. So if I wanted to do something like, say, I needed to type in the square root. Notice I get the square root of the integral. Oh, that looks like a t. How about the sum? Oh, that looks like a k. So the handwriting recognition is there. So you could handwrite on this format as well. So handwriting recognition is an option. All right, but getting back to what I was looking for, I was looking to do a median because I want to find some medians. It says compare the medians. So I want the median of, and far, as soon as I typed in the word median, you notice I get a suggestion at the bottom here that gives me the syntax. So I don't need to remember the syntax. I don't need to go, okay, it's median what? How do I name the list? Well, I name the list business Y, and then I'll delete that part. Whoops. Median, business Y, and it gives me the median. I want the median of my chemistry majors in terms of Y, and then I want the median for my physics majors, which I called physics Y. So there's my medians, and again, I can answer the question just by going right in and calling the median, or even better, I tell my students, I don't want just answers, just naked numbers. You want to explain what it is. I like seeing visuals. So I'm going to just create some graphs now. And I'm going to create graphs of my statistics. So again, I just want to look at business Y. I want to look at chemistry Y, chem Y, and physics Y. And now I'm going to select each one individually, go back. I want to create a graph, and I want a box and whiskers plot. And there's my box and whiskers plot. And I want a box and whiskers plot for the B variable, which is my chemistry. So I want to create box and whiskers plot there. And then I will create a box and whiskers plot finally for the last one. And now there's my information. When I click on the graph, it gives me the 5-number summary. You can also control things like, do I have outliers? Do I see the X and Y? Is it numbered? Do I have a grid? Do I have union and intersection? Are my coordinates standard? Or do I want decimal answers? Am I talking about T's, R's, and thetas? Conic solutions. If I click on the other 3 dots, which is up at the top for setting, I can go into my math settings and decide, am I in complex format? Am I in radians? Are my variables real? Am I going to show my quartiles? So you name it, you've got controls for just about everything. And you can customize this any way you want. So again, this is the information I want my students to give me. I want them to be able to talk about both of those interchangeably. I want them to understand what all these numbers mean. I want them to say, okay, my data, that was the second one, which I think is chemistry majors. My chemistry majors tend to have higher medians, higher highs. My lowest value, 48,000, is higher than all of the business majors. It's in the lower quartile of, or the lower half of my physics major. So I want them to make connections between all of this information. And again, real easy to do. If I wanted to do the mean, you could do the mean for any one of those for the business people. And again, you just type it in, tell it which variable list it's in, and it pulls up the information. So all the things I can do statistically are all built in there. So there's ways you can do that. If you don't know where the commands are, you can always pull down the help, and students have access to the help. Last question, then I'll go into some of the, what does this look like if I am now running out of time and I have to turn this into a PDF? How can I do that? So I'll answer this last question, and I'll show you that. I'll also show you how you submit this to get the information back to your own personal email. So the students will be able to submit this to me, and I'll be able to give them feedback on it. So based on the analysis conducted, independent research, how could the newspaper report be modified to give a better description of the relationship between the number of semesters and the starting salary for people in the sample. All right, so now this is where I'm using this new scatter plot. So those 3 scatter plots I created earlier, I would be able to recycle and bring down below. So I'm going to just move this over. So I need my chemistry majors. I need them to have a scatter plot that's up there. I need my physics majors to be in my graph. So now, after they've done that, I want them to create regression. Now, notice this is as easy as finding the command you need and just telling the computer, you know what, I need a linear regression. So in AP Stats, it's more about interpreting. I'm not as concerned about being able to type the right buttons in the right order and what's the syntax and what is it that I need. There's other software programs where you've got to do a whole lot more just to get the same information. It's not intuitive. It's not easy. When I'm working in statistics and data, that should be the first options that I have. I should be looking at, well, what can I do with this information? Can I do a test for regression? Can I do a linear regression t-test? I sure can. In fact, I just did. And here's the results. Do you want the X list? What's the X list? What's the Y list? So I want my business X, my business Y, my frequency is 1. I go ahead and execute that information. It'll go ahead and calculate the regression model for me. So it's all in there. It's an easy thing to do. It's not complicated or hard to do. So it gives you everything that you need. So I want my students to pull that information and bring it down below. So you know what? I'm just going to bring this one down because I'm going to use this graph in my new analysis. One of the assignments I did with my students was to determine whether or not Friday the 13th really is an unlucky day. And the way we did that is we pulled information from the internet from a website called Dazzle, which is Data and Story Libraries. Great resource if you teach AP Stats. And you just cut and paste the data. And then they look at the information. I had to write an article telling me whether or not Friday the 13th really is unlucky. One of the other reasons I chose this problem was because this is a great example of the Simpsons paradox. Not the Simpsons like Homer, although as soon as you say Simpsons paradox in class, somebody inevitably in class is going to go, no. So at least you know the Simpsons have been on longest running TV in TV history. So at least it's still relevant. It's not a TikTok show, which apparently TikTok is a huge thing. So I think Amy and Karen,
Yeah,
I think we're thinking about doing that.
No, we are not. No.
No, we're
You're
staying
not
away
doing
from
a
that
TikTok
one.
channel?
No, not at all. Sorry.
One of the other things, I could go on for a couple of more hours. You can do things like adding functions here. You can add data. The data, if I use it from the actual graph sticky itself, will allow you to move points around. So notice I'm moving the points. Now, I didn't do that earlier because now it's going to just change my whole regression. And you notice, as soon as I decided to drop it, my regression equation changed. So I don't tell the students they can do this because I don't want them to know that they can mess up my data. Now, right now I'm working in a homework sheet, so the homework sheet's going to default back to where I left it. So if I want to talk about an influential outlier, what happens if I put a point way up here? That influential outlier is going to change the entire direction. So it's a great place to be able to do things that we could do before in other software programs that cost us money. This one is not costing me a thing. And since I'm working in the student homework version of it, they can't break my data set. So they can play around with things, they can move things around on my original data set. It will always snap back to what I have created. So what I've created is locked in. And that's the one I showed you earlier. I've got 2 tabs open. This is my original one. And the second one is actually the student version. So let's say I'm done with my AP exam. I've created a sticky that explains what I did, and I typed in what I have. Oh, I'm good to go. I've got 5 minutes. My clock has started for submission. I want to go File. I want to say Print, and this defaults to print as a PDF file. So the picture you will see that comes up is going to be a PDF file. Now, right now, I'm not seeing a whole lot of anything, which I would have been nervous had I not seen Mike Reiners last week do the same thing. So here's the reason why. Right now, I've only got this last little text box selected. So let me unclick that. Nothing is selected. If I want to select pieces, I could select those two and my response, and those would be the only things that graphed or showed up. If I click on the empty space, everything is now selected. File, Print. This will generate a PDF file. Right now it is printing it, but here's all my information. Question with my ID and information on the top. This is in PDF format, and all my responses, all my sticky notes are on there. Now some of them have bled over. Now seeing that this happened, I can move them up or down or move them. But here is all my information in one nice easy place. I could save this and send it along to the AP graders. So there's my save as PDF. I click save. It's a nice small file. I can just upload it. I'm ready to go with plenty of time without having to worry about, am I converting it? Is this a JPEG? Is this too high of a resolution? Because if it's too high of a resolution, it won't take the question either. So there's a lot of things to consider. But more importantly, I like the fact that this information is there. The students have it. I can have it as a student save it or click submit. My students will say, okay, once I hit submit, I won't be able to edit it. So that's it. You're done with the homework. You've completed this AP exam practice. I'm going to say okay. They create a URL. You notice it says show URL. They copy this URL into an email and they send it to me, and then I get all of their work. So I get all of this information back to me. I'm able to give them feedback. I'm able to say, hey, you know what? You really needed to do a little bit more explaining. I can click through all the boxes that they created. I can move things around to make sure that nothing is hidden, nothing is in a weird spot. And I can see exactly what students were trying to convey. And if I see something on a sticky note that doesn't belong there, I can ask them, well, why do you have the mean when I was looking for just medians? Why is that there? Why did you do a statistical test? Where did that go? You name it, it's all there. It's a really nice format. And again, I can give them feedback. I've been giving them feedback on the same information. So it's called an all-in-one. It literally is all-in-one. If you are doing calculus, I'll just show that there are some calculus features built in.
Is the statistics test like the calculus where they get to questions and then a certain amount of time, or is it different than the calculus?
No, it's exactly the same. They're going to get two questions. Yeah. They say the questions are going to be similar to questions 2 and 3. Question 6 tends to be the investigative task, which takes a little longer. I think question 1 has a shorter time limit and question 2 has a little bit longer. But the last 5 minutes, the question, I guess, gives them a timer that says you have to submit your answer, and that's when students are scrambling. And according to AP, if your file doesn't upload before you open up your second question, that's okay. You can go on to the second question because the timer just basically keeps going. Once you open the test, the timer starts running. When you're done with question 1, question 2 timer starts running. So
oh really? Wow.
Oh yeah, it's a real bear because you got a time limit for both of them combined. And from what I'm hearing from some of our best students, we had students who finished early and tried to submit early, and every attempt that they made got counted against them as an attempt. So they actually got locked out because after a certain number of attempts, you get locked out. So they had finished with plenty of time, but got locked out because they tried to submit too early.
Oh, my.
So, yeah, it's been kind of a pain. And the other thing is that they're saying that you should really wait. Tell your students, wait until you get a confirmation that your answer has been submitted and accepted. If it doesn't come up, then you can petition to have a retake right away. I know AP was going for, we want to be able to hand this information back to the teachers and have them use it in assessing the students and assessing your program. So there's some give and take. On the back side, this is my student version, which I sent out as homework. Let me show you what I did to create that. So this is my teacher version. In my teacher version, I've got a stack of all the papers I've created. On the 3 tabs, the 3 little settings, what I did was go to share and created a homework. So I could have done it privately, where only my students get it. I could do the URL share, which I chose to do it as a homework. I gave it a deadline, and you can change this deadline, and then give it a password. The student needs the password. Or you can do a public share. I will be sharing, I can't share this for the public because it's an AP exam, but if this was something I had created from my own mind, I would do a public share, and that's where Cassio has been doing it.
In the
Oh,
public.
yeah.
Yeah, so if you're looking for Ish material, you can search by his name and find his activities. Actually, you go by, what do you go by? What do you go by?
When I save them, I don't know. Ishmath?
Sometimes, I think it's Ish, yeah, because I will
think
search
his
for your
username is Ishmath.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ishmath.
It's ishmath@aol.com is my email, and I keep getting made fun of as the years go by because I still have an AOL account. I guess people don't have those. I have a Gmail account too, but it's one of those I just never got rid of it. Plus, it's so darn cool. Are there any questions on the side?
I don't see any at this point. And we are very good. You have like 3 minutes left. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, you know, sometimes things line up just perfectly. Check out all of our information. Karen and Amy are going to talk about this, but we are all over social media. The YouTube channel has a ton of stuff on there. Also, there's another YouTube channel for the Cassio education site. I just want to plug that one. Yeah, for the hardware, because I think one of my videos is up to like 30, 40, 50,000 views. So
there's a lot, yeah.
There's a lot on there. So that's some pretty good stuff.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Ish. This was fantastic. I learned something new every day. And hopefully, if any of you have teachers or students you know are going to be taking this test, we can pass this information along. Ish is going to do another webinar next week. And next week, you're going to be using a calculator, right? Like a handheld?
Yeah, we'll be using, I'll be using the handheld emulator. I think it's going to be the 9750.
Okay.
To show the same kind of thing. How can we use that? And I'll be using a question from 2019 released exam. We got permission to use that one as well. So.
Oh, awesome. And we are going to have this recorded, as Ish mentioned, and so that will be up on the YouTube site by tomorrow. So if you know people who might benefit, students, teachers, once I post that up, it'll be on all these social media channels and you can pass that along. And hopefully we'll get some more folks joining us next week. But in the meantime, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Ish. Thanks, Amy.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. Thank you, Karen and Ish. So if you have any other questions, feel free to throw them into the chat box or the chat panel, and we'll try to answer them before we log off. Otherwise, thank you guys for joining us tonight and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.